Cool. So a couple quick housekeeping notes just before we introduce ourselves. I'll have our EU team introduce ourselves. If anyone's having any technical problems as we move throughout the workshop, you can DM me in the chat. And we will, just so you know, we'll be having a Q&A at the end of our first hour and at the end of our second hour. So just know that there will be a formalized time to be asking questions, but don't hesitate to ask questions throughout the course of the workshop. So just a real quick overview about what we're going to be doing today. I'm just going to give you a little intro on the project. We're going to do a demo on our tool, give you time to ask questions about it. And we're going to take a break if we need one. We can also keep barreling through whatever we really feel like is our best truth in that moment. We'll go into some breakout groups. Adam has broken you guys out into groups, and I'll read out your names. And in these breakout groups, we will really move into using the tool, like, you know, getting some hands-on. You're going to get to see how the tool works, but then we're going to get to use the tool on our own desktops and get to play around in there and see what we can find. So, and then we'll come back together and we'll talk about what we found and more questions that we have, and hopefully have a really cool and interesting conversation. This is, you know, really thought and question provoking work. So we're just trying to create a lot of questions today. So yeah, so the project that created the tool that we'll be sharing with you today is called, as Adam mentioned, the Environmental Enforcement Watch, and we lovingly refer to this project as EEW. And this is a project of the Environmental Data and Governance Initiative, which we also lovingly refer to as EDGI. So got lots of little nicknames. So EDGI is an international network of about 175 members. It's probably more than that now, but we're from about 80 different academic institutions, nonprofits, just concerned citizens. It's a grassroots volunteer effort that was spawned in 2016 when Trump took office, and there was a large fear that a lot of the federal online databases were going to be deleted, and as we did find, a lot was taken off of the website, but this fear and this effort and this coming together created a duplication of these repositories of public data that are vital to environmental health research and knowledge, like what we're going to share today. So EDGI has been paying really close attention to this EPA legal compliance reporting since Trump took office. And we most recently released a report on the really astonishing decline of enforcement and compliance during COVID-19. And this quote here that I have is from Cynthia Giles, who is a former EPA administrator. And I think you guys heard from some EPA administrators this week already, but it's been stated, and you know, we've definitely found this throughout our own work, that significant violations occur at 25% or more of facilities in nearly all programs for which there is compliance data, and significant violation rates of up to 50 to 70% are not unusual. And you know, this has a really strong effect on people's health. So I know I'm reiterating things that you guys have heard about this week, but it bears repeating, I think, because it's really why we're really diving into this data and why it's really important that it be accessible for everyone. So actually, before I show you more, I'm just going to have us really quickly introduce ourselves so that you know where we're coming from. I'll start with myself. My name is Casey Greenleaf. I'm the events and one of the outreach coordinators for the EU project. And I came to EU in undergrad. And I'm right now in southern Vermont, and southern Vermont has been really affected by climate change. So that's sort of why I got into this work. And I use she, her pronouns. And I'll pass it off to Cole.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cole Alder. I started working on EU with Casey last January when we were both students at Northeastern. I'm actually finishing my last year at Northeastern. I'm studying environmental sociology there. And I'm in the Outer Banks right now, but I'm usually working out of Richmond, Virginia, where I'm from. And so there's a lot of just like obviously structural racism and environmental racism that I grew up around that really inspired me to get involved in this work. And I'll pass it to Megan.
Hey, my name is Megan Raisley. I first started working with you in June of this year. It feels like forever ago now, but just June. I just graduated from the University of North Carolina. I'm currently in North Carolina, but have sort of been between the Carolinas recently, and I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. I guess I've been involved in sort of environmental activism work for a long time, and throughout my college career, I was really involved in divestment work and was sort of searching for a way to combine my interest in data science and environmental activism. And I think EDGI is a great example of that. So that's why I'm here. And I'll pass it to Leif.
Hello, I'm Leif. I've been with EDGI for about 3 years. I'm a environmental historian by training, specialize in lead poisoning, very depressing subject. But I've been working, I work on a lot of enforcement data stuff for EDGI, but I also work as the oral history interview curator. So one of our other major projects is a big interviewing project with current and former EPA people. We've done probably close to 150 interviews now. So we also work on the qualitative side of this, but we're really excited to, I mean, all this stuff is like really incomplete without, you know, people to tell stories around it and figure out what's going on. So it's really, we're so excited that you guys are here to help with that aspect of it.
All right, thanks everybody. So moving on a little bit more to tell you why this project exists. I don't want to get too much in the weeds of it because I want to move on to showing you guys how to do everything. But back in 2016, as I said, for fear of it getting deleted, EDGI figured out a way, because we have some really amazing data scientists on our team, they figured out a way to copy over the entire EPA database that is currently hosted on what's called the Enforcement and Compliance History Online, the ECHO website, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with already. But this is copied over up to date every 2 weeks. So the Environmental Enforcement Watch project was inspired by the Open Water Data Project. So one of our folks, Sarah Wiley, she created this project in addition to Laura Perovich and environmental justice organizations. And they wanted to make visualizations of Clean Water Act data. So they made these floating lanterns and they put them into the Chelsea Creek to show where the pollution in the creek was coming from. So it's sort of revealed how useful ECHO might be for communities to track pollution and EPA response in their area. So this also, unfortunately, revealed the inaccessibility of ECHO for non-specialists. It's really tough to use. And so also there's many omissions, errors, and confusions that are present in the data itself, but not gonna get into that too much. So a lot of this work in the Environmental Enforcement Watch stems from our work around environmental data justice. So environmental data justice is promoting the production and use of environmental data to challenge structures of oppression, like, you know, fascism, racism, heteropatriarchy, classism. But we really believe that data should serve communities and not just corporate polluters. And we also believe the communities should be able to have more resources for collecting and analyzing environmental data. So that's sort of where we're coming to this project from. So yeah, this is ECHO that I was explaining before. Really tough. It only shows 3 to 5 years on the actual interface, whereas there's many more records dating all the way back to the 80s. And it often, you know, misrepresents the data, and sometimes it just doesn't work at all. And so we developed at EDGI our own way of looking at the data, using something called a Jupyter notebook. And what this does is it queries our database that we've copied over, and it bypasses the design of the EPA website and allows us to look at the exact same information. So we've been able to find out a lot using this tool, and we really want to be sharing it and empowering folks to get the enforcement data on their own areas or areas that they're doing research in. And so right now what we're doing is we're working on reports to analyze the home districts of legislators on the Senate Environmental and Public Works Committee and the House Energy and Commerce Committee. These are the groups that are responsible for oversight of the EPA in the federal government. And so, as you can see here, there's been a lot of work done. We're going to be releasing these reports on the 19th, 14th under embargo, and I'll give you a place if you want to get the first look at these on the 14th. You can put your email in, but we'll do that later. So that's like really what our hands are full of right now. And so we've really sort of come to the conclusion informally that the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act, which is a law that requires this data be publicly available, is sort of being violated because of how obscured this data has become. And our thinking is that without data justice, there can't be environmental justice. So that's where I'll leave you. But in the meantime, there is actually still really good information available. And we're going to show you how to access it through this tool that we've created, this Jupyter Notebook. But in order to really fully understand what's happening, I'm going to turn it over to Leif to give you a little bit of background on how the EPA is actually I'll let Leif tell you more, but how the EPA is sort of noting that the data works, the administrative background. So I'll pass it over to Leif.
All right, thanks. So I'm sure you guys have heard a lot about this, but it's of course the 50th anniversary of the EPA this year. And a major reason that the EPA was created and laws like the Clean Water Act were passed in 1972 and the Clean Air Act in 1970 is that there was environmental regulation at the state and local level, but it was in some cases the regulations weren't very good. In a lot of cases there were regulations, but they weren't enforced very well. And so a major reason that the EPA was created was out of this need for national level enforcement, what the William Ruckelshaus called the gorilla in the closet, which was this idea that, most of, in our sort of federal environmental policy system, much of the enforcement could be and is in fact still carried out by the states. But the EPA would be there to step in the case that states were unable or unwilling to do actual enforcement, to do effective enforcement. And so, because I'm a historian, I like to talk about that aspect of it, but just as a sort of historical framing for what we're getting into. So we're, the major programs that we focus on in these notebooks are the Clean Water Act, and in particular, the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, which is the permitting system that allows, facilities to release emissions into surface waters. There's other aspects of the Clean Water Act that have to do with wetlands and stuff like that we don't deal with. Similarly, with the Clean Air Act, it regulates stationary sources, which is what we focus on. It also regulates mobile sources like automobiles. That's not part of our notebooks here. But stationary sources are obviously a huge thing. And then the final one we do is sort of the trinity of air, water, and land is the Resource Recovery and Conservation Act, which deals with hazardous waste, and particularly a lot of waste related to land and that sort of thing. So those are the three main programs that we focus on. You want to go to the next slide? So just to give you a sense of how the system works, a lot of it's built around, most of it's built around permits. So facilities getting permits to pollute essentially at some level, there are standards set through the laws or through state implementation plans and so on that set what those emissions can be. There are inspections, so especially for the Clean Air Act and the RCRA Act, Resource Conservation Recovery Act, which we refer to as RCRA, that really relies on a lot of in-person inspection to actually find violations. For the Clean Water Act, there's mandatory electronic reporting. So a lot of the facilities are supposed to monitor what's going on and input that into electronic systems. So there's actually much better, as we'll talk about more later, there's much better data on the Clean Water Act for that reason. So those inspections, that monitoring identifies violations. And then the EPA or the states can proceed with enforcement actions. They can do informal enforcement actions, which might entail just sending a letter of, notice of violation, or it might be a formal action, which would be a case, which could be an administrative case where it's just like within the EPA's administration, it's like offer, issuing a police officer issuing a ticket sort of thing. In bigger cases, it will go to a judicial case, so an actual court case outside of the EPA. And those are both for civil violations of the law. And all of our stuff deals with civil violations. There are also criminal provisions in many of these laws, and our notebooks don't deal with data on criminal violations. Unfortunately, that's just not part of the ECHO database, so we don't have information on that, but that is another aspect of it. All right, can you go to the next slide then? So that's kind of how it works in theory, but just to give you a sense of, especially since you guys are interested in clean air, to give you a sense of how much loss and sort of corruption there is of information along the way. This gives you a sense of kind of, the whole universe of actual Clean Air Act violations that are out there, and how many actually end up in the ECHO database. So a lot of them are never discovered in the first place because, especially with the Clean Air Act, it relies a lot on inspections. If you don't have enough inspectors going out there, then you're not going to discover a lot of these things. A lot of these facilities are also supposed to report aspects of clean air violations, and they often inaccurately report those. So that's another reason that these violations aren't discovered in the first place. There's all sorts of possibilities for improperly recording data or keeping data, losing records, and so on. And most of these issues, by the way, are at the state level. So EPA's in the ECHO database, the EPA, states do most of the enforcement. So most of the cases, inspections, violations come from states. If it's the EPA that's leading it, the data is pretty good. But if it's the states, it's not. So the states often don't do a very good job of any of these aspects of the enforcement process, from inspections to record keeping. And then a major one is that they're supposed to pass that information then to EPA, report it to EPA. But a massive amount of those violations are never reported to EPA. So this is, and the other thing about this is a very hard thing to figure out how much loss there is. But one study by the EPA's OIG, which it's kind of old now, but it found that about less than 15% of significant Clean Air Act violations that were recorded in the first place, that they even knew about, actually made it into ECHO's database. So that doesn't even include all the ones that were never found in the first place, right? So when we talk about Clean Air Act violations, and this is also true, probably true to some extent of RCRA as well, there are really serious problems with interpreting that data for these sorts of reasons. I think that's it from my part of this.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk super briefly about the greenhouse gas reporting program. It's pretty different from the other statutes that Leif was just talking about, in that it's pretty new. So it was just mandated by law in 2008. People first started reporting in 2010. So data is currently only available from 2010 to 2018. The 2019 data is about to come out. And there's no permit or enforcement procedures. So major emitters and suppliers of greenhouse gases have to report to this program, but they don't have to ask how much they can emit, and they don't get in trouble if they emit a lot. So it only covers, like I said, major sources and suppliers of greenhouse gases. So major means that they emit greater than 25,000 metric tons of CO2 equivalencies every year. And that equivalencies means that it counts a bunch of different greenhouse gases. So in addition to carbon dioxide, it also covers methane, sulfur hexachloride, nitrous oxide, and basically those other greenhouse gases are converted into the warming potential of a metric ton of CO2. So that's how that's determined if you have to report or not. And then if you see this image on the left, these are some of the major types of facilities that have to report. So like a factory, an oil refinery, direct underground injection from fracking, I think one of the major limitations of the GHGRP that can be kind of difficult to understand is that future emissions have to be reported, in the sense that, so an oil refinery is going to report emissions in its location. So say there's an oil well in California, and they're not necessarily directly emitting all of the emissions that are going to be produced from the oil that they're drilling, but they're predicting that, oh, if a car drives this oil, it's going to emit this much, and if it goes to a plastics facility, it's going to emit this much, even though you're seeing that value in the place that the oil refinery is. So it can be a little confusing in terms of looking at the data itself. And it directly emits smaller sources, end-use emissions, demand, and it also directly emits, if you look on the right here, it emits agriculture and carbon sequestration efforts. So it's a bit limiting, but it is still really useful. There are about 8,000 facilities that report annually, and in total there are 41 different types of facilities that have to report to GHGRP. So with that, I'm going to demo a notebook for us. I think I saw at least one person knows what SQL and Jupyter Notebooks is, so that's exciting. So this is sort of our bread and butter. This is where we get all of the information for everything that we do. Basically, EDGI has a copy of the entire ECHO database, and it's hosted at Stony Brook University. And so every week, ECHO updates the database, and every week we also update our copy of the database. And so this platform is basically querying our copy of the database, which is preserved and independent from the ECHO database. So this is a platform called the Jupyter Notebook, and it allows us to use and look at code, but not necessarily be familiar with code. And it's hosted on a Google platform called Colab, which allows us to look at it in a web browser. So basically, we have these little buttons throughout the notebook that look sort of like play buttons. And that's how you run through the notebook. And you can look at the code as you see here, but you don't really have to understand what it's doing necessarily. And all of these numbers are sort of telling us what's going on. So I'm gonna run through the notebook just as it is here, and we're gonna look at Wayne County and Michigan, which covers most of Detroit. And if anyone has any questions at any point, just interrupt me. So in step one, we're sort of bringing in some code for querying the database from GitHub, which is a place to store code. It's where we store all of our code. And it's going to tell me that Google didn't author this notebook. That's okay. We know that we did. So we're going to run it anyway. And then we know it's done when the little circle stops going. So we're finished with this one. And then this is going to ask us what type of geography we want to look at. So we can look at a county, a congressional district, that's a federal congressional district, a state, or a zip code. So we're going to choose county. And then this is going to ask us what state we'd like to look at. And I'm going to select Michigan. And then this is going to finally ask us in step 4 what county we'd like to look at. So I'm going to choose Wayne. And then step 5 is just sort of going to show us the top violators for clean air, clean water, and RCRA in Wayne County. Oh, your faces are in the way, I can't see this. Here we go. So top violators being the facilities that have been in compliance the most over the last 12 quarters. So that's over the last 3 years. So we have one of these graphs for every program. So you can see under the Clean Air Act, it looks like US Steel has been in violation for the entirety of the last 3 years, as has all of these other organizations. And then we see, this is a pretty consistent trend for clean water, that a lot of places are in violation for the entirety of the last 3 years. So all of the top 20 facilities in Wayne County have been in violation for the entirety of the last 3 years. And then the same is also true for RCRA. So all of these 20 facilities have been in violation for the entirety of the last 3 years. I'm not from Michigan, so I don't necessarily recognize a lot of these, but often if you look at a region that you're familiar with, you recognize the companies. So then we're gonna choose what program that we wanna look at. And this section here sort of gives us a lot of information about what we might wanna look at or questions we might have.
Hey, Megan.
Yeah.
Real quick, there were some questions of what the colors meant on the bottom colors?
Oh, they mean
That was-
nothing. They're just beautiful.
Okay. The colors are beautiful. They mean nothing. The colors are to soften the message that no one is in compliance.
Yes. Yeah, I can't see the chat right now. So if you just have a question, just unmute yourself and interrupt me. Yeah, so this can kind of give you a little bit more background about what program you might want to look at. And then this cell is actually going to ask us what we want to look at. So as Leif sort of went over, we know that Clean Water Act violations is the most well-reported program in terms of violations. So that's what we're going to look at. But these are all your options. And I just want to flag for you, if you're looking at penalties, that's actually going to show you the number of enforcement actions. And if you want to actually see fines, you'll have to go to a spreadsheet that's produced later in the notebook, which I'll show you. But we're going to look at Clean Water Act violations. And then sub 7 is when we actually query the database. So we're asking our database to get all the information about Clean Water Act violations in Wayne County. And we're only getting information from 2001 to the present because ECHO has said that you should basically only trust data from 2001 to now, and any older data isn't necessarily reliable, even though it is in the database. And so this step, this is probably my favorite thing about all of our notebooks, actually makes an interactive map. So it shows us where the facilities are, and then it actually lets us go to the ECHO report for an individual facility if we want to click on it. This might take a second. I might switch over to one I've already run if it doesn't want to do this. Oh, here we go. Maybe. There we go. It's thinking about it. Okay, I promise this works. I just made my notebook maybe 10 minutes ago. So I'm gonna switch to one that I've already run. Oh, no, there it goes. Okay, so I'm gonna zoom in to Wayne County here, and we can see that there are 8,900 facilities in that county. And then if you already see, so you see these 3 facilities that look like they're closer to Grand Rapids, that's a direct ECHO error. So a lot of times they have the wrong address of a facility. And it's reported in Wayne County, but obviously it's not. So if we zoom into this, we can see where all of the Clean Water Act facilities are in Wayne County. And I'm just gonna click on one to show you what happens. So gotta keep zooming in here, there's a bunch. We wanna zoom in until we have individual facilities. These must be quite close together. I picked a bad one. Okay, these must be on top of each other. Let's scooch over here. Dun, dun, dun.
I think you can also click the circles and they'll expand.
Yeah, they will. There are a lot of facilities here. So if I click on this individual facility, this is, oh, actually remember this was in violation from the earlier graph. So this will take us back into ECHO basically and take us to a page that is a detailed facility report for this police. So I'm gonna click on that and boom. So now we're back in ECHO and it gives us a lot more detailed information about what might be going on with this facility. So we see that they report under Clean Air, Clean Water, and RCRA, and that a violation's been identified in Clean Water Act, and they've been in violation for 12 quarters. So I'm not gonna, there's a lot to unpack in facility reports, but I'm just gonna scroll down to this and see what's been going on. So they've had this violation for a long time, and they have reported non-compliance. And if you keep scrolling, it'll probably tell you what type of effluent they've been in non-compliance for, but I'm gonna go back to our notebook. But I think that's probably my favorite tool, so I wanted to show everybody that. Let's zoom back out here. So there's our map. And the step 9 actually creates this spreadsheet I was talking about. So this is going to, if you see this little file icon on the far left here, and then we hit CSVs. This is now a downloadable CSV that has all of the data for Clean Water Act violations since 2001 for Wayne County. So that's really helpful if you wanna sort of do your own data visualizations or sort of dig into the data more. And then this is actually gonna chart the data. So this is, like I mentioned, data since 2001, and it's showing the 4 different types of Clean Water Act violations that exist. And okay, I'm going to try to remember them all. I might have to look. So the blue line is a direct effluent violation. So a facility reported that they emitted over their permit, right?
Can I just drop that, Megan, what each one
Oh,
is?
you did? Okay, perfect. Then I'm not going to go over it. But basically, you can see I'm going to remember. Let's see. Permit schedule violations are like by far the highest type of violation, especially over the last few years. Also, it's important to be mindful any information about 2020 is incomplete because 2020 is incomplete, and also because of the COVID policy, which essentially halted enforcement. So take 2020 data with a grain of salt. And then after this, we can look at a really specific facility. So if we know a facility exists in an area and we want to learn more about it, we can select a facility. If anybody sees one that they're interested in, shout out. I'm just going to pick, okay, I'm going to pick Chrysler because I know Chrysler. Does anybody have one? Sorry.
BASF Corp.
BASF. Okay. What is that, if you don't mind me asking?
It's a chemical company. It's
okay.
They create pesticides. They create a bunch of stuff.
Gotcha. So this is going to produce some basic data about that facility. So if you see all these different codes here, it means they're listed a bunch of different ways in the database, which might be confusing. And there's data, it looks like going back to 1996 for this facility. And then if you scroll all the way over here, dun, 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 you can go back to that detailed eco facility report that I showed you earlier from the map. So there's sort of 2 ways to get to that. And then this might be a little confusing to look at just here, but we can produce a CSV just like we did for the earlier data for this specific facility. So if I go back here, I can see that I did Amazon earlier. I now can see this spreadsheet just for this facility and all the information we have about Clean Water Act violations for it. And then, yeah, if you can run it completely over, you can start with a different region. You can stay with the same region and go back up and choose a different type of data you want to look at. But that's sort of a basic overview of this notebook. I know that was a lot of information. Let me see how I'm doing on time. I have a few minutes left. So if anybody has any questions or wants to look over anything again, now is a great time to bring that up.
I saw that John asked for a little more clarity about permit schedule violations. And there's that link there that I dropped from ECHO website. So there's like, from what I can see here, there's like 20 different kinds of permit schedule violations it has listed. So yeah, it's not like one type of violation necessarily. There's like, if you have like a permit or like a scheduling thing, like you don't turn something in on time or you like misrepresent, like there's like a violation code, schedule event code, like you misstate the violation type. It looks like there's a number of different kinds of violations that fall under that category.
So that's the tricky thing sometimes about, so if it seems like there's not a lot of effluent violations, but not a lot of schedule violations or permit schedule violations, an effluent violation is when a facility is directly reporting that they're doing something wrong, right? So permit schedule could be anything from they forgot to they decided to report wrong because they know they did something wrong, right? But we don't necessarily know that information. Yeah. Any other questions? If not,
there's a couple questions in the chat.
Oh, I can't.
That's okay.
Yeah, if you tell them to me, I can.
Yeah, Loretta asked if there's a similar database that tracks Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act violations, which I don't.
I don't know if that's in ECHO. Is it part of TSCA? Is it part of the Toxic Substances Control Act? No. Leif, do you know the answer to that?
I don't think that there is data on FIFRA violations. There's data on FIFRA cases. So Echo is like there's just like dozens of different databases, and within them there's dozens of different spreadsheets and stuff. So it's a very Byzantine system, but and they don't have a lot of stuff. But there is a kind of separate from what we're using right here. There is a system that really tracks enforcement cases that are only ones that are led by the EPA, and that has information on cases related to FIFRA. And I'm happy to send you more information on that, but I don't think that there is a database of the violations themselves.
And John asked if there is any data available on non-point source pollution.
Not in this, definitely not in this notebook. I don't think in Echo. Is that correct, Leif?
Yeah, again, there's case data related to the Clean Water Act, but there's not like a violations database that's related to it. So you could look up cases where they prosecuted people for non-point source violations, but not actual just the catalog of all the violations.
Okay, well, oh, I see something else. Oh, okay, well, if there's no questions right now, I'm gonna stop sharing.
So now is a great time, like if you've had any questions about the project itself in general, about Jupyter Notebooks, maybe not even the data, but we have 15 minutes now between when we're gonna go to the breakout rooms. So if folks wanna raise anything, any questions, now is the time to do so.
This is awesome. Just wanted to say that. Echo's terrible, and this is much better. I'm just thinking I've tried to roll my own Echo database in Postgres, and you guys have done it for me. So this is so much better. I'm excited.
That's great. It looks like Lakshmi has a hand raised.
Yeah, I don't know if this is like the right question. I'm just thinking about how to use this. And recently I was reporting, I'm in the California Bay Area. I'm in Berkeley. I was reporting on a sewage spill in Oakland. So it was sewage in the water. And so something, if that happened to be reported in this, it would be documented. Or should I also then, like, if I know of something that happened, check that it's in the system to keep the company accountable? Is that?
Yeah. I think on the Echo website, there's actually an option to report a violation. But if it is a single event, like release violation, theoretically, it should be available in Echo under Clean Water Act violations. And if it's not, then that's a problem.
And then how soon, then it would just depend on how soon that company reported it, right?
As well as how soon the state
and then the update, okay.
updating it, and how soon or how good EPA has been doing those updates as well. So there's a lot of moving pieces.
And the other thing is oh, go ahead, Cole.
Oh no, if you're gonna, there's just more questions, but if you have more to say.
I was just gonna add to that they're also generally reported on a quarterly basis. So it's not gonna catch something that happened a week ago immediately. I just wanted to raise, Virginia, can you just raise your question out loud? I think I'm a bit confused about what you're asking.
Part of the issue is my computer totally, like halfway through your explanation, my computer just went off. So I had to reboot and log back in. So I missed half of what you said. So I'm just curious if there were other like tutorials or things to walk through online that would like kind of guide people about how to use what you just did.
Gotcha. So I think we're actually working on building a pretty comprehensive tutorial for Jupyter Notebooks. I don't know that that's publicly available yet, but if there's something specific, like I think we'd definitely be happy to meet with you or go through something until those exist.
Additionally, I would add that in these breakout groups that we're about to go into, everyone's gonna get to really go in it, and you'll be able to look and you'll be able to ask any questions of the moderator of your break. So hopefully that'll work. And there's quite a few other raised hands.
Yeah, so I think Jacob was next and then Emily.
Can you guys hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, hey, a question. I've been tracking cruise ships from Alaska, and ships operate something under a vessel general permit (VGP), and this looks like you track things by fixed geography. How do you find ships that move around, especially like foreign flagged?
I guess do you know that they report under the Clean Water Act or the Clean Air Act?
Yes, because they have a vessel general permit.
I see.
Well, that's the extra. The VGP, yeah, has an incidental discharge under the Clean Water Act. So.
Well, I think these notebooks are looking at permitted facilities, which is probably a different category than what a cruise ship. I don't know if a cruise ship would be considered, or a ship.
Yeah, they do, but I mean, sometimes they come down to the state. So sometimes the states will give them permits to discharge waste, but they also have air permits. So maybe it all goes through the states because the states have taken over enforcement of that. But I know they have a thing called a VGP, which is an EPA permit, and they monitor discharges of things like their scrubber systems that takes the sulfur out of the exhaust stacks, which turns the air pollution into water pollution. And that's one thing we're looking at really closely. And they have to report their pH levels. So I was just wondering and we've gotten some of their reports to the EPA, but I was just wondering if we could get the raw data using this tool, because it would be very helpful.
Yeah,
because the FOIAs take months.
I think I'd have to ask some of our more database heavy folks about that. But I don't think we have it currently. Okay,
because I was wondering, I guess, roundabout way of asking, can you search by name of facility, search by geography, and see what facilities are in that spot? Yeah. I know the name of the vessels, for example. I could look that way.
Right. So at the end of the notebook that I just shared, if you know a region that you think they might be permitted under, you can do a drop down that shows you the name of all the facilities. So you can search that way and see if they might be there.
Okay.
Have you gone to the ECHO facility search page?
I'll go there right now. Thanks. I won't take any more time.
All right. So Emily and then John had a question.
Hey guys, yeah, I hope you can hear me because my computer is also having a hell of a time. First of all, this is amazing. I couldn't believe that Edgy would be doing something like this 4 years in, and everything you guys have done is fantastic. I also have had tons of trouble with Echo. I'm trying to do a project right now on drinking water quality, and I was hoping maybe you could just talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls of that in terms of what is reported and what's not reported, because I'm finding that violations or average violation numbers is often a lot of not reporting or missing rules in some way, and not so much violations of too much arsenic or too much nitrates. And also with so many small systems, it's kind of hard to get a sense of how a state or a region is doing on drinking water quality, because it's so different from small place to small place. So I was just wondering if you, since you've probably gotten personal with that data, kind of like I have, if you have any thoughts on that.
Yes, I would just, I'll let Leif chime in after this, but we haven't actually worked a lot with Safe Drinking Water Act data, but you can visualize it in the notebook. So you can choose to look at SDWA site visits, enforcements, public water systems, or serious violators. So that data is there, and you can do some of the basic visualizations that we have, and then you can also download the spreadsheets. But I don't know that I've worked with that data enough to have a general consensus on it.
Yeah, I can't remember the details, but I know that the safe drinking water data in ECHO is extremely poor. So I think that I'm not sure that it would be I mean, it might be much like the Clean Air Act that I mentioned earlier, where let me look up. I know some notes here somewhere about why it's so bad. It is it's one that's a real red flag one.
Yeah, I'd love to chat more about that offline later if we can.
I was gonna say, if there's questions, we have a team behind us as well who have, you know, it's like institutional knowledge based on person to person and their intimacy with the data. So if we can't figure out a question here, we can bring it back to the team and we can figure it out there to the best of our ability. So we'll be sharing, I think, our contact information will be shared out and you can get in contact with us about anything you would like to know.
Yeah, and regarding your last question, I did just share a link to a study with former EPA Administrator Cynthia Giles that goes over a little bit of detail about state underreporting the EPA across the different programs and like the different estimated levels of underreporting.
Did we miss anybody?
Did John have another question?
Oh, yes. You're muted, John.
Yeah, here we go, right? Can you hear me now? So you were saying how the Clean Air Act data is just kind of based on self-reporting and is kind of shite. So the Clean Water Act, you said, is mandatory and electronic. Does that mean there's kind of just electronic devices that are reporting real data that is automatically getting uploaded? Or is it that they're just required to sample their effluent, whatever, on some schedule, and then they're required to send that in? So is there, I guess my question is, how reliable is this Clean Water Act data that you're presenting, and might there be reasons besides actual changes in pollution that the data might change from year to year? Maybe I mean, how much can we, you know, invest in analyzing this data? How reliable is it? Is it going to, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so there is some electronic monitoring of that. So, but the mandatory electronic aspect of it isn't that per se. It's just that when they're doing their self-monitoring, they have to input it into an electronic database, which is, I mean, differs by state, but it just is an electronic database that allows. So that's part of the sort of whole scheduling permit thing. Like if they don't submit it on time, it just automatically shows up as a violation. So, but the key part about that is that electronic reporting makes it very easy. It bypasses the whole issue of the state, which is one of these big obstacles to getting data from the facility into the ECHO database, because states are just horrible about reporting, passing through that data in addition to doing inspections themselves. So the mandatory electronic reporting is just that part of it. They have to put it into an electronic database. In terms of the so it is more, I mean, all this data has to be, there are reliability issues with it. But, and so one of the things to consider is like changes over time where different requirements. So like the electronic reporting requirement actually came about like a few years ago, and we're still actually trying to figure out how that would affect trends over time. So yes, I mean, there are pretty much all this stuff. There are ways in which you have to consider sort of whether it's an artifact of some sort of data reporting, which differ by state and change over time, or it's an actual change in violations or enforcements or whatever.
I will say, because like we would say that we probably consider the Clean Water Act to be some of the most reliable data that is in ECHO, and so I guess that in terms of if you can trust it, like it's some of the most trustworthy data that we do have.
Thanks. It looks just like a fantastic tool to make this accessible to those of us who are not coders.
We're coming up on 3 minutes till our break time. So if anyone has any other questions, we have about 3 more minutes. Cool. And if not, I've split everyone out into breakout groups. Do folks feel, I'd love to like hold the room. We can like end 10 minutes early, or we can just keep powering through the 2 hours if folks feel like they really, oh, looks like Sarah has a quick question. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm looking at the search, that the Echo search that was dropped into the chat that does a facility search, and it has I tried the name, and it's pulling up the wrong facility, and then and this is facility ID number. Is that the same as the IFD, the TRIFD from the TRI database?
I believe it's different. I
Okay.
think the facility will have like an actual facility ID number, and then based on its whatever program it is regulated under, it has a specific ID number for that.
Do you know if the ID number is in the TRI database?
I am not sure.
Okay.
I will say that the facility ID thing is really problematic because sometimes one facility will have multiple facility IDs. If it's like, it's on a corner of a street, for example, it might have like 2 different addresses and 2 different facility IDs. So facility IDs are difficult.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I wish it was better.
We ran like a UX study sort of in multiple university classrooms on Echo. So Sarah Wiley, who's one of the coordinators of this project, I was in a class of hers last semester where it was an undergrad class, and we ran a UX study to just we gave basically this class of undergrads questions about a specific facility to answer through like searching it through Echo. And one of the first problems we found is that because the facility was regulated under the Clean Water Act and the Clean Air Act, it had different ID numbers for each of those, and they were actually listed at slightly different addresses. So it gets really confusing.
Well, maybe I can just tell you what I'm trying to do, and maybe you'll have an idea. I am looking at the facilities that have the facilities on the Louisiana coast that have the largest amount of toxic chemical storage. And so I created a list via the TRI database of 30 facilities that have the greatest amount of toxic chemical storage. And I'm trying to get the RMPs. I have that, you have to go to a reading room, and a U.S. Marshal has to like watch you, and I have that appointment next week. But I also wanted to run it through Echo. And so I'm just trying to figure out, I have like all the information from the TRI database, but similarly, some of the same facility names have different like sites where there's chemical storage at different sites. And so do you have any ideas about how I might run those facilities through Echo as well?
Are those facilities mostly also listed under RCRA?
I'm not sure.
I don't know for a fact, so like don't take my word for this, but I would think that most of those facilities would report under RCRA. So I would try looking at RCRA violators. But that's sort of my only first piece of advice. I don't know if you have anything else, Leif.
No, I don't know as much about the TRI facilities search.
And I don't know which breakout group you're signed up for, Sarah, but I'll be leading the RCRA breakout group if you want to change to that one, and we could look at whatever counties in Louisiana you're interested in and see if any of those facilities come up.
Okay.
Notebook.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I can move you. It actually works out numbers wise.
Perfect.
All right, so I think now, unless there's any other questions, I'm going to institute a very formal poll via thumb and see if people feel like they need a break or if they want to just kind of barrel on through and move into our breakout group. So if you're feeling like you would like a break, you can just shoot a thumbs down to going straight forward, and then throw your thumbs up if you're ready to just keep on trucking.
Casey, I'm going to make everybody, let's just take a super quick break.
All right.
If somebody has to go to the bathroom, I don't want them to like have to jump off during the training.
All right, so let's do a 5-minute break. How does that sound to everybody?
Sounds good.
All right, we'll come back at 12:07 or 08.
Hi, Casey. Oops. Sorry.
I'm still here.
Yeah, I think I might have logged on a little late. Was there a link to the breakout groups, or like I've never done breakout groups on Zoom before?
So you don't have to do anything. I will put you in a breakout group and move you into a breakout group. So it all will just kind of flow like that.
Okay, cool.
You literally just have to sit back and relax.
Yeah, I think 3 breakout groups, one looking at the Clean Air Act, 4. Yeah. So the breakout group for clean air, clean water, RCRA, which is hazardous waste, and greenhouse gases. So do you know which one of those you would prefer to be in?
You're currently in the Clean Air Act with Leif. That works? Okay.
Can I request or ask where mine is?
Yeah. You are with me in clean water.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Hey, Casey. I'm like the others. I kind of logged in late because I had wrong time zones. Do you know where, am I in any group?
I'll let you know. You are in the greenhouse gas reporting program.
Okay.
But I will say, for anyone who, I hope people can still hear within earshot, these breakout groups, they're like loosely based around these different programs, but you are going to have the notebook, so you can look at whatever you want. It just gives you like a more deep dive into each program, and it's really just to show you how you can move throughout the notebook and get back and forth. And so we can look at whatever we want. It's just sort of a loose guideline.
Do you know if each breakout group would be recorded? I'm also interested in RCRA, so.
I think we can. Yeah, I think we can record each breakout.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so right now I think I'm recording this meeting just like onto my computer, and then I can upload it later. So I would think that all of the breakout groups get recorded. I don't know if it would just record the one that I'm in. I can't hear you, Casey.
We can make sure all the moderators record if not.
Yeah, sorry. Somebody had a question about recording breakout rooms. You have to record them all.
Yeah, we'll make sure they're all if one gets recorded, they should all get recorded. So we'll try to make sure that happens.
Casey, can you actually record a breakout room? I didn't know if you could.
I think you can. I'm pretty sure you might have to press record.
Okay. I guess we'll find out.
We'll find out soon enough.
Okay.
And if not, we, like I said, we will be able to go into whatever people are really interested in the breakout groups. They're intentionally long so that we can do that. And so the moderators we're kind of here as your guides to get through the notebooks on your own. So, we can start in one place and end in a completely different place, and that's no problem.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And Iana, Adam, and Dave, if you guys can hear me, if you guys want to go into a breakout room, let me know which one you want to go into, because currently you are going to end up floating around in the ether.
Oh, just throw me in anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whoever you think looks like the most trouble, I'll be in there.
Probably mine, most trouble.
But that's probably me, so you might. Yeah, I appreciate this though. This is people are really excited about learning more on how to use this. So I've already gotten emails off list threatening to rope you guys into reporting projects. So I think that's probably what you're here for.
That's what we're here for. Alrighty. So it is now 12:08. So I'm going to press open all rooms, and moderators, please try to record. And as I said before, so I'm just gonna let people know where they're going right now, just so they're not surprised. With LAIF and Clean Air Act, we're gonna have looks like Dave, Emily, Jason, Joe, John, Max, and Sarab. And with, let's break out room 2. And with me, and for Clean Air Act, or sorry, Clean Water Act, it's gonna be Adam, Beth, Melissa, Mohammed, Rachel, Sarah, and Tara. Or Tara, or Sarah and Tara, I don't know. And then in breakout room 3 for RICRA, it's gonna be Jacob, Nat, Rye, Shannon, and Virginia. In breakout room 4, which is Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program, it's gonna be Iana, Jay, Kelsey, Lakshmi, Laura, Loretta, Megan, and Tegan. And as I've been saying before, but I don't know if everyone heard me, these are just sort of like general guidelines. So we'll start with each program, but we can end up wherever each group feels the need to end up. And you'll get to look at the notebooks yourself and run them yourself. And I'm seeing people might want to switch breakout groups. So let me just give me one quick second to do that.
We're coming back at 12:45 Eastern, Casey?
Yes.
Okay.
Just give me one second here. So we're getting some last minute. So we're just going to extend the group for a moment, or we're going to extend the break for a moment, just so I can move people to where they really want to be.
And also, just to remind everyone, you'll each get the link to the notebook, and you can dive into whichever program you want on your own. The moderator's just there to guide, like, and make sense of what you're seeing if you have questions. So even if you're in, you know, Clean Water Act breakout group, you can still look into greenhouse gases or hazardous waste.
All right. I'm just going to move one last person, and then I'm going to move everyone out. All right, here we go. See you guys in 30 minutes-ish.
How's everybody doing? Good. So, does everyone have the document with the link to the notebook? If not, I can drop the link in the chat.
Can you drop the link, please?
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
So, let me sec here. There's the link to the notebook. And I'm going to screen share here for a second to walk through. And let me know if you have any questions before we get started. Also here, I'm going to drop some guiding questions in the chat here before I continue. This is what I hope we can be thinking about while we get going. So, does everyone have the notebook open? Yep. All right, my Wi-Fi is a little slow here, so this might take a second to get going. Wow, more than a second, I guess. Okay, here we go. So as Megan stated, there's a little bit at the beginning of the notebook that tells you how to run it, just essentially clicking through these cells. And so if you scroll down to cell number 1, we can start by pressing that little play button, and you get this message that it's not authored by Google. That's fine, it's authored by us. And sometimes if you're having a connection problem, it'll tell you right here, if the notebook is working properly, this is what this will look like. And so if you see something else in this little box here, then it's still working to connect. So now we're going to run the second cell. And here you can select the region of interest. For this demo, we're going to look at Wayne County in Michigan, but if you want to look somewhere else, if you want to look at a whole state, a congressional district, or a zip code, you can feel free to do that for your own investigation. And so once you select your region of interest, you run this cell, which gives you a widget to look at a specific state. I'm going to be looking at Michigan. Then the next cell, you can choose the county, and depending on which one you selected before the state, it'll give you the different zip codes or congressional districts to look at. So I'm going to do Wayne County, and we've been looking at this one for the demo because there's a lot of industrial activity there, so it'll have some pretty rich information. So now this is going to chart the top violators for each program. And Megan did this in the demo, but I think not everyone was there. And so here you see for the Clean Air Act, the top, I believe, 10 or 20 violators based on the number of quarters they've spent in noncompliance over the past 3 years. And yeah, again, the colors don't mean anything. And here you get some more program-specific information. Because in the next cells, we're going to decide a specific program we want to look at. Obviously, we're focused on RCRA here, but feel free to look at whatever you want. I'm going to start with inspections because that with RCRA, so there's different like mechanisms with the different programs in terms of how inspections and violations relate to each other. So because the Clean Water Act, it has that automatic reporting system, a violation that's recorded might spur an investigation or an inspection, whereas for RCRA and Clean Air, primarily violations are discovered as a result of inspections. So there's like a reverse relationship there. So this basically provides a chart of all of this is just all of the data on RCRA inspections for this county that have been pulled. And as you can see, there's over 8,000 rows. So to make that a little easier to get a handle on, we're going to make an interactive map with this cell. And again, feel free to stop me with any questions along the way. This one tends to take a minute because it's got a lot of data to pull in. Okay, let's give it a minute here. Here we go. All right. So here we can see all these facilities. And again, if you click on one, there's a link to its detailed report on ECHO. How much detail is actually there is up for debate, but here we go. And so this cell just wrote a CSV for all of this inspection data, which you can find here under CSVs. And you can, it actually has CSVs for inspections and violations, and you can download that there. Okay. Now we're going to chart this. So this shows the trends of hazardous waste inspections in the county over the past 20 years. And with RCRA, I believe every facility is supposed to be inspected once every 5 years. So it doesn't seem, based on what we've seen in other counties and congressional districts, that really doesn't seem to be the case. But this looks like it has a fair amount of inspections. But again, depends, there's probably tons of facilities. I believe like 8,000 RCRA facilities in this county. And then here it populates, this is a list of every single facility in the county that is regulated by RCRA. And so if you want, this is where you can look into the specific facility. And there's so many chemical facilities in here that there's probably a lot of good places to start. I noticed Honeywell, chemical manufacturer, earlier today, so I might start there. And so this has a list of the inspections that they've had. You can kind of scroll through to see where they were and some details about them, but you can also, again, this link is to the detailed facility report on ECHO, which is the same as if you were to click it on the map. And then here, you create a CSV of the data for this specific facility that you can save to your computer. And then that's the last cell. So if you want to look at a different aspect, you can go back up to where I selected RCRA inspections in cell 6, and you can look at a different aspect of the data. So does anyone have questions so far? A facility they want to look into? We can go back up and see the top violators.
I have a question. I'm not seeing one of the facilities, or the first facility I'm looking for.
Yeah.
It's called Convent Refinery.
Mm-hmm. And is that in the Louisiana? That's where you were looking?
Yeah, it's in Louisiana. Mm-hmm.
And do you know the address?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll put that in the comments.
Okay. And it's in the county that you chose for sure?
I put it in, I tried state. I tried searching by state of Louisiana.
Okay. And it didn't show up, huh?
I'm not seeing it.
Okay. Let me try that and see what I get. Because there's so many facilities in the state of Louisiana, it might be easier if you knew the county, because then it would just provide a shorter list of facilities.
Yeah. Let me just make sure that I know what.
Okay.
It's St. James Parish.
Okay.
Parish, our county.
Let's check that out. Okay, Louisiana. Okay, it said St. James?
That's correct.
St. James Parish.
Right.
Okay.
St. James Parish, that's the county.
Great. Okay. Oh, that's odd.
What's odd?
Well, these charts don't normally look like this. Because see, it only has one facility here. This is supposed to be the top 10 violating facilities. And there's only one here, which would make me think that there's only been one RCRA facility in the county that has any quarters in violation for the past 3 years. So we can find out actually true.
Industrial area, so that is surprising.
It is. It is very surprising.
And it's in the Cancer Alley region.
Yeah. So let's find out. So I've set violations here as the aspect I want to look at. And here we'll create a map. Does it really only have one facility? Okay, that's odd. It probably means that there's an issue with this parish's reporting to EPA. And on the ECHO website, there's often like notices that they're having ongoing data issues with certain regions and states in the country that they're like in the process of resolving, and they usually take a long time to be resolved. Okay, and looking at Virginia's comment in the chat, destination path. Do you want to share screen to show me what you mean? I'm not sure. I'm also not on the data side of this project, so when it comes to getting weird responses from the code, I'm not really an expert there, but I can try to help you figure this out. Okay, let's see. So what's the issue you're having, Virginia? You're on mute.
So the first step, I clicked on the like go button, and this is can you see my screen?
I can, yeah.
So I get this fatal destination, like whatever this message is. And so I don't know where to go from there.
Is anyone else having this problem? Let me see if I put the wrong link in the chat.
Yeah, I'm having the exact same problem, and so I don't see the bars of all the different programs.
Okay.
Like we saw.
I'm not having that issue.
I'm really sorry about that. Try this link instead and see if you have the same problem.
Is it the browser you're using? Because I didn't have that issue.
Were you not using Chrome?
No, I'm on Chrome.
Okay, that's odd. I don't know if it's just the number of people using the notebook at the same time. That shouldn't be an issue. So here, try that link I just dropped in the chat and let me know if you're having the same issue.
Yeah, I'm using Safari, but it worked a minute ago, and then it didn't work when I tried it again. Okay. So I don't know what it is.
It looks like it's working for Virginia. This is what it's supposed to look like. So yeah, anyone that's having trouble, try the most recent link in the chat, and it should work out for you. Why don't you continue to share screen, Virginia, while we go through your notebook and make sure there's no other issues, so you can run the second cell. That's fine if you want to look at zip code or select a different geography. Okay, and scroll down. Yeah, and then run the next cell, exactly. So press yeah, perfect.
No, it's good for me. Thank you. It was the link, I guess.
Yeah, no problem. Is anyone else having issues or have questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. So this tool basically it's a really good mapping tool or aggregating the information for like the top violators and things like that. But then it just lands you back to the ECHO database, right? That's where the data is stored. It's just kind of a tool getting you to the EPA.
Are really one of the more helpful data analysis aspects, because on the actual ECHO website, it'll only show you the past 3 to 5 years, whereas the CSV shows you the past 20 years of enforcement and compliance history.
But still, it takes you to ECHO though, the EPA site, to actually get the most up to date information on compliance and things like that, right?
Yes. But
so
okay, sorry, go ahead.
So my question is, when I hit onto some local facilities and there's some recent violation letters. At that point, is that where you have to go to either the state agency or the EPA and say, hey, or the private entity and say, hey, can I get a copy of that letter generated on September 18th or whatever?
Yes.
Okay.
And unfortunately,
they don't post the letters.
Yeah, because a lot of times on ECHO, they'll say they'll have like a link to a enforcement case report and you click the link and it's not actually there.
Okay.
And we
No, this is really useful. Like in the last 15 minutes, I've actually requested 2 different letters from 2 different facilities. So
great.
Yeah, there's stuff going on here. It's good.
Awesome.
So I was hoping I could ask earlier when it was everybody in the same group and Megan, I think, was showing us going through it with us and she looked at the CWA results. These code things had popped up. Is there anywhere, and at the time I think Leave had put what each of them meant in the chat, but is there anywhere in the program that actually says what it is, what each of those would mean?
Yeah, so in an older version of this notebook, it did lay out the definitions of each of those, but somehow when we made some updates to address data issues, that was removed. So in our next update of this notebook, we will make sure to get that info into the actual descriptions. But
when's that update happening?
Sorry, what was that?
When's that update happening?
I am not sure exactly. I don't decide, but we'll be compiling all of your questions and comments, and we should be getting back to everyone in emails when they're addressed.
Okay.
Answer your questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have more questions.
Sure.
I'm struggling over here. Okay. I searched, like I said, by state, and in the I think I'm on the step 7 part, where it says once you've chosen the program and data type you want to focus on, and then it gives you a window that shows kind of it looks like some facilities. I'm not, like, the facilities it's showing me, or the violations it's showing me are very, very old, like from the 90s. And it's a very short list. But the map shows me more facilities, and most of them are tiny facilities, like dry cleaners and stuff.
Can you share screen so I can see?
Yeah.
Awesome. And sometimes that is the case, that there haven't been any reported violations for years, but because it's for the whole state, I mean, it shouldn't be just small violators. Okay.
Yeah, this is all I'm seeing. I don't know if...
Yeah, so if you, on the left-hand side, there's that files icon. And the left, on the bar, yeah, this one. No, the bottom one of those icons. Yeah, so click on that. And then CSVs. And if you want to download that, you can open that CSV as a spreadsheet, and it might provide some more detail. So let's see what happens when you do that. So hit the 3 dots on the right next to that, and then download. And let's open that and see what you get. Because see here, there's one from 2007. Because there's just so much data in this CSV, the little chart on the notebook can't really display in a visually understandable way. So that would mean you would need to like actually dig into the CSV itself. And whenever you search for like an entire state with this notebook in particular, that will generally be the case.
Okay.
And once we release this congressional district report cards project late next week that Megan mentioned, there will be a different notebook that will be available upon that release that allows you to see the data in a slightly different way.
Oh, okay.
And so that one will actually make a bar graph for each aspect of the data, so you can see like the trend of violations, inspections, and enforcement actions and fines in a bar graph form instead of as a CSV. Any other questions so far?
The map won't show on my, like I'm having 0 other issues, but the map won't show up. It loaded, but won't show up.
Can you share screen?
Yeah.
Oh, Sarah, we might need you to.
Oh, stop share, sorry.
Thanks.
Yeah, just no other issues, but when I try and move that.
This one usually takes the longest to load.
Well, even when it loads, it just like
Yeah.
something processed, but it just doesn't show up.
With your Wi-Fi connection at all?
No, I'm having 0 other issues with this. Like all the other stuff showed up.
Odd.
Everything else showed up. The later stuff shows up, but the map won't show up.
I will flag that for the data folks. I'm not sure why.
Okay. That's fine.
So I'm sorry. So when I'm looking at this data and this, am I unmuted?
No, I can.
Okay. When I'm looking at this data, and then is there a way to filter by what's the worst? You know what I mean? Like the most violations or something. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what the top violators section of the notebook was for, to show you the top 20 violators for each program.
Which step was that?
That is, let's see. Step 5.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
What are you seeing there?
Some not surprising stuff. Yeah, there's some plants that I am aware of. And some of them are in the coastal zone. So then I just click on there's a way to click on this to get the echo report from those facilities, or?
Yes. Will you share screen again?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, so if the map section is working for you, so you can't get to the echo reports from these graphs. You'd have to do that either from the map or when you select the specific facility in step 11.
So I have to know where on the map they are?
Well, not in step 11, it just has the list of facility names, so in alphabetical order, and you can just select it there.
Oh, okay.
So make sure you run all of you've run all of these, and here you should, where it says $1.35 dry cleaners. Yeah. What's the facility you're looking for?
Well, I got my I have like ADD, I think. But I saw another facility name that I got excited about for a second. But I was looking for this. Mosaic was the first one that was in that list.
Great. And it looks like there was another Mosaic facility right under this one, so it might be one of those two.
Right. And so then I just click.
Yeah, for number 12, you can click the play button here. And then scroll down to the next cell of the notebook. And that will, for 13, that'll create the CSV for that specific facility data. And then that will show up in your files, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Any critiques of this tool so far? We're also very curious about that. What you wish it would show that it isn't.
How much harder is it just to make it all interactive instead of just like clicking a bunch of run buttons? Like how big of a lift is that?
Well, it's not. So you can actually, if you go up, let me screen share. You could, depending on the notebook, you can go up to runtime here and run all, but then you don't get to select the specific geographies and programs that you want to look at. It'll just default to whichever the first one is there. So this is, if you go to runtime and run all, it will run the whole notebook with the default options in each drop-down menu. And so this one is looking at the first alphabetically listed county in the first alphabetically listed state, which is Autauga County in Alabama. But yeah, and it's kind of a deliberate decision to make them to be able to go through each step at a time so that you can like see how the code is working without having to actually know how it works. So you can kind of, for people that aren't familiar with code, they can get some idea of how it works here. And this shows that in this county in Alabama, there's not been a single facility in violation of the Clean Air Act, which indicates that the state is not reporting these to ECHO because, of course, there's going to be violations. And it's the same for RCRA. So what we're seeing here is probably evidence that Alabama is doing a very bad job of reporting clean air and RCRA. And the reason that Clean Water Act violations are showing up is because of that automatic reporting system. And so that's a clear indication that the things that are automatically reported are showing up. The things that are self-reported are not showing up. That's a bad sign.
I grew up in Alabama. I would expect nothing less.
Oh, and here we can see, so that these top violators graphs up here that we saw are only for the past 3 years, right? And there were 0 RCRA violations shown there for the past 3 years. But here you can see in this chart of RCRA violations that the last recorded hazardous waste violations here were in 2016. It cuts off at 2016 just because there were no reported violations after that. And so the notebook just works that way. So, you know, if the last reported violation was in 2010, that would be the last year shown on the graph. So what that indicates is that under Trump's EPA, there's been no reporting of violations of clean air and hazardous waste, which is unfortunately the general trend. And we've also seen, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask, so where it says, or where it has that top 10 list of like worst, what does it mean by worst? Like the most number of violations?
Yeah, so this the number of quarters out of the fiscal year that they've been in violation.
So my graph for Louisiana has, it's just full. It's just like all of them are full. So then would I have to go through, like it had, the whole chart just has like, you know, the bar goes all the way across. So then would I have to go in there to see if there was, what's differentiating one from the other? Would I have to download each file to do that?
You probably would have to download each facility-specific file or go to its detailed facility report on the ECHO website. So the fact that all the bars are completely full means that in every quarter of the past 3 years, they've been in violation of that statute.
Okay.
It means the top 20 violators have all been consistently violating every single quarter for the past 3 years. Whereas here, if you can see on my screen, so the top violator here, it's been about 12, it's essentially every quarter for the past 3 years. And this one, they've only been in violation for 1 quarter of the past 3 years.
So have you guys done a systematic look at all of the states to see, you know, if this pattern that we saw in Alabama is consistent, and like in which states it's consistent regarding like the Trump era reporting of violations?
So the report card project that we're doing. So this is the current website, but we're creating a new one. But you can see here our congressional report cards project. We basically created a report card looking at RCRA, clean air, and clean water for each of the congressional districts represented by members of the congressional committees that oversee EPA. And that's the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee and the House Energy and Commerce Committee. And so we've created reports for the districts of each of those House representatives and the states of each of those senators. And it's a total of 70 representatives. And there's, I believe, 21 senators on the Environment and Public Works Committee. So we've created systematic reports for 21 states, essentially. And those will all be released in the coming week under embargo. So those will all be available. So these are all the folks that we've created those reports for. And I believe, I don't know if I'm actually allowed to show those yet, but they will be released under embargo on the 14th. And we've looked at some national trends too. So one thing I can tell you off the record is that for all of the states and districts that we've looked at, for the Clean Water Act, which is the only program, again, that has automatic violation reporting. In the states and districts we've looked at, on average, there's been a 544% increase in Clean Water Act violations since Trump took office, compared to the previous 3 or 4 administrations. Compared to Obama and Bush, there's been a 544% increase under Trump. And we've also seen a general trend across the country of enforcement and fines going down with violations going up. Do you have a question, Jacob?
Have you?
Go ahead.
Oh, this is right. Just a question. Have you looked at the lack of reporting during the sort of COVID era, which is sort of understandable but dramatic? Can we detect that somehow?
Yeah, we actually created a notebook specifically for that, and we have a report about it. Let me drop the link here. Here's our COVID report, and that'll show you some stuff that we found from the COVID notebook. And we did generally find that enforcement has pretty much come to a halt. I gotta run and grab my computer charger. I will be right back. Someone's grabbing it for me. Okay. I believe these breakouts will be ending rather soon.
So cool. If we, I mean, definitely I want in on the stuff you guys are going to have come out soon, but, you know, if we play around with it and we have questions, we can just reach out to one of you guys and just like set up a time to just chat and walk through and make sure that what we're thinking we're unearthing is actually what we're unearthing.
Definitely. Yeah, I think Casey, when we all return to the main group, Casey will be going over how we're going to stay in touch and everything. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No problem. And I'm just going to return us to the main session now since we've got 30 seconds.
Things they discovered or incredible questions that is just burning in the front of their minds that they want to bring up to the group. Welcome back, everybody.
I found something weird.
Let's go.
In St. James Parish in Louisiana, which I believe is the chemical corridor, it showed only one RCRA facility.
Interesting.
Which seems maybe.
What's the company?
We also had basically no facilities in a Louisiana parish we looked at, which was super weird.
And I also found that for that parish, there were plenty of Clean Water Act violators, like in the top violators charts. The Clean Water Act violators chart was full, and then Clean Air and RCRA, which do self-reporting as opposed to automatic reporting, had no violators in those top violators graphs, which probably means that they're just not reporting the EPA.
Yeah, I think Louisiana. That's very Louisiana.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the number of facilities was pretty alarming in that. To me, that sounds like a Louisiana problem.
Definitely.
So now that we're all back, we only have 10 minutes left before we're at our time, and like people are totally welcome to stay on. Like I won't close this down if people want to talk and continue asking things, but if people have a hard stop, that's totally fine as well. I'd love to know, like, if people want to, you know, raise their hand just to make sure we're not talking over each other. Like, if people have any burning questions or anything they're excited about, you know, using this tool for, would love to just hear folks' feedback and sort of get a conversation started about it.
We definitely had some requests for people continue to use the tools, and they need to ask us to make sure that what they're seeing is correct, that they can reach out to us.
Definitely. And yeah, we'll share our contact information.
How do we get access to the embargo reports?
You're muted.
Yes, we would love to get all of your emails to send out any press releases that are coming from us or the embargoed reports. Honestly, if you want, just drop it in the chat and I'll make sure to grab your email and get it on that list.
And then Lakshmi and then Sarah had a question as well.
I momentarily blanked. No. Yes, I am thinking it would be really interesting to overlay. So I'm in the Bay Area. It would be really interesting to overlay the maps with I don't know if it's census data or just like the race and class stuff that comes out to just like show the environmental racism. I didn't know it exists, so I don't know.
That's actually something I didn't. Yeah, we were in the same breakout and we were talking. Is this my Wi-Fi? Can people hear me? Yes, okay, I just got an unstable notification. So in the facility reports, actually, if you scroll to the very bottom, they'll actually show you the information for EPA's EJ Screen Mapper for the geography of that facility. Obviously, we know the EJ Screen Mapper has some problems, but it is a super useful tool and it summarizes census data for that specific geography. So I would definitely say that would be a great place to look for that.
My question was basically if we were just talking about Louisiana and it sounds like there's like some problems with the data. If I'm reporting something that I'm finding in this data, how do I or how would I go about mentioning that the problems with the data? Is there someone I should interview, or is there something that you guys already have that can explain some of the problems with that there are?
Yeah, we have our report cards, and we're going to have a little overview report to go with them. We'll have a lot of the key data issues in them. But I would say you can reach out to ECHO, and they're usually pretty responsive. But the problems, again, typically lie with the state. And so they may be like, we don't know how reliable the data is coming from the state. So the key people to ask, I think, if you can get them, are the state agencies, and ask them about how they're reporting, whether they're reporting stuff to ECHO or not. I mean, that would be really like, I would love to read something about that, because that's just the major bottleneck in so much of this information being accurate and so on. So I really want somebody to hold their feet to the fire a little bit. And one of the things, I mean, what we're doing, and this may be not what journalists would want to do, but if we're like, they don't have much of an incentive to report violations because they don't want to look bad, facilities don't want to look bad and stuff. But if you're reporting enforcement actions or penalties and you're showing that they are very few of those, they may be motivated to be like, no, we have more data on this. We just haven't like put it into ECHO or something like that. So that might be a way to motivate them to be more transparent about their data.
So before we're really running into our, time limit here. So I want to make sure that I, get everyone on board with what's next for EDGI and what's next for you. So, and we can move into more conversation if folks want to keep talking. But so we only have 2 weeks until our final report comes out on the congressional reports that I mentioned. And I'm just going to share with you guys our Twitter in the chat, if you guys want to give us a follow and stay up to date with our work. In addition to getting those press releases, you can give us a follow. But we do have an event coming up if you want to attend as well, on October 22nd, which is the week after the official public release of our report. It's a Thursday from 6 to 7 Eastern. We're going to be having a panel discussion, and we're going to be giving another demo of this tool to the public. And we're going to have some people on, such as Ed Markey's policy advisor, Hannah Vogel, Union of Concerned Scientists is going to be with us. We have some other co-sponsors like the Environmental Investigation Agency, and I think today we just got interest from the American Public Health Association, if I'm not completely off base on that. So should be a really cool event. We would love to have you there. And again, we're going to have all of the stuff that we shared with you today on our website during the launch. And we'll also forward this to you through Adam and the team. So if there's anything else you guys need from us, again, feel free to reach out via email. And any other questions, again, drop your email in the chat if you would like to get on our press list. And it was really, really wonderful to be with you all here today. And if there's any other questions, we have 2 more minutes left.
And real quick, before people do have to jump off, can we all just thank this team for showing us we haven't done our little clap yet today. So there you go. You get all the applause, all the adulation. We really do appreciate this. This is just an amazing tool, and I know people are really excited to use it. So now people fire away if you have questions, but thanks again for doing this.
I do have a silly question. I thought I downloaded the files on number 9 and I can't find them under download. So I don't, like in my folder where they would normally show up. So did I maybe skip a step, or, because it says wrote CSVs, greenhouse gas emissions.
Yes, so it wrote.
do you want me to share really fast and just show her?
Okay. Go ahead.
So if you're in your notebook and you want to click this little file icon on the left, and then you want to click the CSVs drop down, and this is where it actually wrote it to. And then you want to click download from here, and then it'll appear in your downloads folder.
Excellent. Okay, thank you so much.
I have a question. Given the sort of challenges in the data that you talked about, would you advise comparing violations or inspections across states or across districts or across geographical locations, or would you be worried about just the sort of possible lack of data there could make those comparisons unreliable?
Well, we actually do that in our report cards, but only for Clean Water Act violations, because we know that's the most reliable data. We don't really feel comfortable doing that for the other programs. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Leif.
No, yeah, I mean, I think the Clean Air Act violations and RCRA violations are ones I would be really wary of drawing any conclusions from. In fact, it may be the exact opposite of what it looks like, in the sense that places that aren't doing a very good job of doing inspections and recording stuff will record few violations. It might look like they're doing better than places that are actually aggressively enforcing. The enforcement data, inspection data would be more reliable, and I think, again, would be something that you might get a state agency to talk more about or clarify more. So if you're willing to reach out to a couple state agencies, you wanted to compare states or something like that, that would be good. But
and it might even be interesting to compare like the violations in a state agency database to the violations that show up in ECHO, just to see how many aren't actually being reported to ECHO. But I mean, they might not be recorded in the state database as well. So there's that.
I did a story on violations last year with Ohio EPA, and that was such a cluster. Like, they used to import everything into spreadsheets and send them out, and they've decided to quit keeping those types of records. So I was literally having to go through by hand and look at PDFs and enter and tally, do my own tallies for each category. And like, I'm on deadline and 2 hours away from filing a story, and they were searching for more violations to send me on deadline to quickly add to my tally. So this is definitely making me want to go back, and because 2020 has been such a cluster, I haven't done 2019 yet, but with this tool, I think it'll be really fun to see what exactly does ECHO have versus the state, and are they even shipping off these records like they're supposed to? So I think that'll be a lot of fun. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah. And in our report cards that will be released next or the week after next. There are a few districts within Ohio and a senator from Ohio, so I believe there should be a statewide report on Ohio that will be available then too. And I do remember, I think, from the trends that Ohio looks pretty bad in terms of both enforcement and violation.
Yeah, they're a fun department to cover. I mean, if you tell them that you're working on a story and it involves some like polluter, I mean, they will call up and tell the polluter ahead of time and kind of sometimes ruin your chances of trying to get an interview because they give them a heads up. They like to think of themselves as having a good working relationship with the companies. That's their spin on it.
Well, that might be it, Casey. I think
Well, that's
we'll just
awesome.
have to, we've dragged them through 3 days of EPA subject matter, and I think they're stoked to use what they've learned, but also stoked to maybe get back to other parts of life that aren't so EPA dominated. But
Understandable.
yeah, and everybody, thanks so much for tuning in and joining us. And you were a very engaged and awesome group to work with. So it was a pleasure getting to sort of meet you. Hopefully in some not too distant future, IGNR can throw you on a bus with a bunch of other journalists and drag you around to see these places we write about. But until then, take care, stay safe, and all that jazz. So
yeah, thanks so much
Rafe
for
and
coming.
Casey
Thanks,
and
everyone.
Nicole and Megan, thanks so much.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you for having
Thank
me.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys. Take care.
Thank you.